there, you beautiful people. My name is Willow, and welcome back for another Cyberpunk 2077 challenge run. In my last run, I attempted to beat Starfield as a sniper, which was quite precise, and today I want to tackle my biggest challenge yet, as I attempt to do every Cyberpunk 2077 quest on the very hard difficulty as a samurai. Before we get into the run, let's lay down some ground rules. I can only use throwing knives and katanas to deal damage unless a quest requires the use of another weapon. In that case, it will not invalidate the run. I must play the entire game on the very hard difficulty. I can't use any bugs or glitches on purpose to exploit the game, and I will not be using any mods. Alright, with the rules laid out, I think I should probably just jump right into it, where I pick the very hard difficulty and the Corpo Rat background before randomizing my character a few times and getting into the game, where I find myself puking into a sink. Lovely. After a phone call with my choom Jackie, I get into another call with my boss telling me to get to his office, so I take my sweet time talking to a dude named Frank for a little while before finally making it to my boss's office. I try to see what happens if I just don't sit down, but the game doesn't progress if you don't sit down, so I sit down and watch him kill a whole board of regulators on live news by hacking their cyberware before he talks to me for a bit and sends me on a job to kill his boss with a fat stack of eddies in hand. So I call Jackie and ask to meet with him, and he tells me he'll be at Lizzie's bar, so naturally I go check my email and use this random inhaler in my desk before heading out to my boss's AV, where I start the ride over to Lizzie's bar, and along the way I see these giant holographic fish, which made me think of the ocean and today's sponsor, World of Warships. Right now they're running the Hunt for the Bismarck event, which allows you to take on the role of the bounty or the hunter. As the bounty, you have to try and survive the hunters who are trying to hunt you down. Self-explanatory. And of course, as the hunter, you're trying to hunt down the bounties. You can unlock historical rewards by earning bounty hunt tokens from either side, whether you choose to be the bounty or the hunter, and all of this without mentioning the thrilling naval combat of World of Warships, where you take command of everything from submarines to aircraft carriers to battleships. So if you ever wanted to have an excuse to run around shooting the biggest cannons ever mounted to ships at other big ships, now's the time, and it's even better to do so because if you use my link in the description or pinned comment, you get a ton of rewards. New players get 20 days of premium account time, the Tenryu Cruiser, an extra port slot, a 6 skill point commander, and active players receive 3 Hunt for the Bismarck containers as well as some possible other goodies. So what are you waiting for? Jump in and hunt down other players or see if you can survive as the bounty using my link below right now. Back to the run, I land at Lizzie's bar and proceed to turn a basketball into a lethal weapon before nailing a full court shot. I head inside and speak with Jackie for a bit before a bunch of Arasaka thugs show up and fire me, which gives me a bad case of asthma before a montage of me and Jackie going on a tear across Night City plays, eventually culminating in us sitting in my car in a dark parking lot, and I deny Jackie's attempt to make me play a tutorial before riding this elevator up to a scav haunt where we are being sent to find a woman named Sandra Dorset. I then go ahead and start a spree of snapping necks as I stealth take down all of the enemies, and I want to get this out of the way now. Stealth takedowns are just allowed throughout the entire run, mainly because of another rule I haven't mentioned but I'm following either way, which is that I'm not using cyberware for most of the run. I'll let you know when I am using cyberware. Anyways, we find Sandra Dorset, and after plugging my cord into her port, removing a shard, and punching her in the chest, I hand her off to the paramedics before riding an elevator down with Jackie while agreeing to let him use my car for the night. We get a call from Wakako, the fixer who set up this job, and she tells us we need to rush home because the cops are throwing a hissy fit, so Jackie starts driving us home. I watch a van get into a terrible accident and then help Jackie sweet talk his way past the cops before a SWAT team absolutely destroys some carjackers. I then arrive at my apartment where Jackie drops me off, and I take a nice nap before waking up and getting a call from Jackie telling me to meet him out in front of the building. I then promptly ignore his request and get to work on all of the side content in the game with the first side job of the run, and side jobs are basically just random side quests that aren't given by a fixer or by the cops. That's pretty much what they are. Anyways, kicking it off, this one involves a guy who got some spicy cyberware that has malfunctioned malfunctioned and is currently burning his crotch. So naturally I need to drive him to a Ripper dock, so I borrow his funny little cheese car, and on my first attempt I fail the quest by running into a cop car, which makes him hop out and blow up, which was kind of hilarious. Anyways, on my second attempt I managed to drive him to the Ripper dock, only being delayed by children crossing the street and a roadblock of all things, but I end up dropping him off at the Ripper dock just in time, completing the first of many side jobs. I then take his wedge car over to a nearby clinic called Clean Cuts, where I get a call from the local fixer, Regina Jones, and she tells me that the local gang known as Maelstrom have taken a Ripper dock hostage and are forcing her to operate on them. This is the first of the gigs in this run, which are quests given by fixers. Naturally, I have to save the dock, and it's here where I die for the first time in this run, as I try and fight my way through the Maelstrom gangbangers, and they absolutely destroy me a couple of times before I slow down and focus on isolating each of the enemies and killing them in stealth until there's only a couple left, at which point I just start swinging my katana wildly until they are all gone. Also, I'm using the Black Unicorn katana as it was just sort of in my stash for whatever reason. After managing to clear out the Maelstrom boys, I find the doc in the back working on one of them, and I refuse to help her, which pisses her off, but I don't care. I escort her back to the fixer's car and complete the gig, only to die a couple of times when I go to leave because more Maelstrom show up and they are chasing me in cars, so I have to hop out and fight them, which is just a huge struggle. But after a couple of deaths, I managed to get lucky, kill them all off, and make my way to the next side job, which just involves going to a store for T-Bug for a reward that she's offering me. Also, T-Bug is the netrunner who helped Jackie and I during the Sandra Dorset quest. I do a hacking minigame and complete the quest, and then make my way to this warehouse for another gig, where Regina calls me and tells me I have to steal a van from, I'm not really sure who we're robbing, but we're robbing them either way. This one is significantly harder than the Maelstrom one, as there's just a ton of enemies and they're very spread out, and I don't deal with a lot of enemies with guns very well. I die a bunch of times, and it was a really bad omen for how this run is gonna go, honestly. I was kind of demoralized by this, but you know me, I just keep trucking on. I eventually find a strategy that involves getting the cops aggroed, which helps me kill off a few of them, because the cops kill a few of them and they kill some of the cops. And then I just run away until they all lose aggro, come back, and eventually manage to start funneling them all into this small corridor where they're forced to fight me one-on-one, and I found out throughout this run that katanas are kind of just the king of 1v1 weapons. You are just completely in control of every fight, as long as it's just one enemy that you have to deal with. Anytime it's more than one, it's a problem, but when it's just one enemy, generally speaking, you're gonna win, because it's kind of brain dead easy to win those. Either way, I steal the van, but before I can deliver it, more of these thugs show up, so I have to stop my car and kill those thugs as well, before making my way to this garage where I deliver the van, before taking on the next type of side quest in this game, an NCPD scanner job. There are probably over 100 of them. It definitely feels like it, maybe even 200, and they are pretty much everywhere. And they are also all exactly the same. I go somewhere, it says assault in progress, there's a bunch of enemies, and I have to kill them. There are like 3 exceptions to this that I remember, so it is literally just go somewhere and kill an indeterminate amount of enemies, and it is very repetitive. I won't be talking about these very much moving on, because it would just be the same thing over and over and over. So after that, I make my way to the docks on the north side of Night City and find a monk, but for whatever reason he has a bunch of cyberware, which is weird because monks in Cyberpunk believe that cyberware like ruins their soul or something. Either way, he explains that him and his brother were taken by a bunch of Maelstrom guys and he was forced to get implants against his will. He asks me to save his brother from them before he shares the same fate, so I make my way over to these containers and try to sneak my way in, but immediately fail because I'm bad at stealth, and then I run to lose aggro, but they just keep chasing me, so I just end up fighting all of them outside here on the docks, and you know what? Borged out psychos didn't do too well. It was a chaotic brawl, but when the dust settles, I find myself the only one standing before making my way inside this building, where I save the monk and send him back to his brother after he judges me for saving him with violence. I then make my way to another NCPD scanner job, killing all of the guys there with stealth takedowns on the way to the next gig, which involves me making my way through yet another another Maelstrom base in order to steal some footage of one of their initiation processes, and this ends up taking quite a long time, but mostly because I was being silly and trying to stealth through the building, and I got caught multiple times and then just ran away to lose aggro and then snuck back in and got caught again. But eventually I just get fed up with sneaking entirely and decide to fight them, which turns out to have been the right choice all along, not gonna lie. It makes things a lot easier because I just absolutely bodied all of them. I wiped the floor with these Maelstromers. I don't know what was different between this one and the previous 2 gigs, but this one was just surprisingly easy for me to make my way through it. So I download the footage and send it to Regina before making my way towards the next gig, and along the way there I just stopped to do a few NCPD scanner jobs along the way, and none of them were particularly difficult, but I think I'm gonna stop mentioning whenever I do NCPD jobs on the way to a different quest, mainly because I do that throughout the entire run, so I just keep saying it. The next gig for Regina is at this diner where I'm called and she asks me to go steal a cybernetic eye that her client lost gambling here. So I sneak my way out back behind the diner, killing a guy outside and a woman inside before grabbing the eye and heading to drop it off, only to die to a bunch of Tiger Claw gang members that I don't even think they were related to this quest, I just think they're here. Anyways, on my next attempt, I take down all the Tiger Claws with stealth takedowns, just like I did with the man and lady earlier, and then turn in the eye, completing the gig, but I have to say, taking them down with stealth takedowns was so funny, because every time I did, all of the, random civilian NPCs would freak out, and they just didn't notice them freaking out, so it was just kind of funny, must have been the win moment. Actually, it was even less than that, there was just no reaction to everybody screaming and running away. It's at this point that I just decide to commit to doing all of the NCPD jobs available to me right now, which took me 5 hours, maybe less, maybe 4. Anyways, many of them are actually incredibly difficult combat-wise, as I'm forced to fight large groups of enemies with little to no cover, and I don't really have good ways to separate them if there's no good cover. Instead of describing all of them to you, or just brushing over it, which also feels wrong, I'm just gonna go ahead and give you a montage, so enjoy! With all of the NCPD scanner jobs done in the Watson area, which I haven't really mentioned yet, but during this part of the game I'm restricted to Watson, which is one of 7 districts of Night City if you include the Badlands, 6 if you don't, and I just realized that the comments are just going to be saying that stupid meme. Anyways, it was a slog, and it's time to tackle all of the other quests before getting back to Jackie and the main storyline. So next up is what is widely considered one of the harder gigs in the game that involves me kidnapping a man named Jotaro, who is just a real pile of human refuse. Unfortunately, I have to fight through a ton of tiger claws through this tiny bar, and it's a mix between stealth takedowns and fast-paced combat as I ride a roller coaster of moving slow and fast and slow and fast over and over and over as I go through stealth section and then go through attritional combat and fast-paced combat. It's really Dynamic, that's the word. Dynamic, that's the word I was looking for, and I'm also completely off script at this point. Either way, I had a lot of fun with this, and surprisingly, I don't die even once and manage to kill all of the tiger claws, and luckily, the guy I'm supposed to kill just kind of loses aggro on me, which gives me the perfect opportunity to just walk up, stealth takedown him with a non-lethal takedown, and carry him out to the fixer's car, completing the gig on my very first try, which I was expecting to have to try at that a little bit longer because I do remember it being very difficult. Moving on, I decided to change things up with the first in a series of side jobs called Beat on the Brat, where I have to beat a bunch of boxing opponents in boxing matches, which was a really wordy way to say that, but we're keeping it in. The first one involves me fighting 2 versus 1 against these twins who aren't twins, but either way, I am incredibly petty and they just keep insulting me, so I save scum like no other in order to win this fight without giving them a single eddy. So yeah, also this fight was super annoying. I had to do a lot of parries and rely mostly on my new dash ability in order to avoid their attacks whenever they came rushing me, and it also needed quite a little bit of luck because I couldn't survive both of them attacking me actively, so I had to just hope that they didn't get too aggressive. Anyways, I do eventually beat them, and with that, I return back to the gigs, and this time I'm sent to kill a Tiger Claw leader, and yeah, it turns out to be a real pain as I die multiple times because the enemies are incredibly durable, and I simply put am not. I die in just a couple of hits, even while deflecting bullets, which is incredibly useful and a new way for me to deal damage. It's also a skill I have unlocked where I can deflect bullets back at my attackers, but it costs stamina, and I don't have a lot of that. It's a very limited resource. Eventually, I do manage to cheese this fight by using a nearby staircase to kill all of the thugs and then take down the woman in one-on-one combat, completing yet another gig before moving on to my next one, which happens to be one of my favorites throughout the run. It involves me sneaking into this dockyard and finding a Russian fixer's car, which I need to plant a tracker on. It was a lot of fun learning the patrol patterns and taking down a ton of enemies from stealth, and I eventually managed to get the tracker on the car without issue before testing out some ideas while exiting the compound, which end up with me dying a couple of times before getting this sick setup where I throw a knife to kill a guard, then do a stealth takedown before escaping the facility, completing the gig without being detected, and moving on to the next one where I need to break into this Maelstrom hideout to find the father and son duo who are selling XBDs, which are illegal brain dances that usually contain some sort of murder. The reason I need to find them is I'm looking for a specific one about a preacher's son getting murdered, so I'll go ahead and die on my first attempt because I get detected immediately by a camera I didn't notice. On my second attempt, I managed to stealth my way through the facility, confront the father and son, teach them a lesson, and grab the bee before delivering it to Regina. I then make my way to the next gig, which ended up being incredibly easy as all I had to do was sneak to the basement of this mega building to kill about 5 tiger claws, which I do very easily with stealth takedowns, my katana, and my new throwing knife. After that, I upload a virus to their servers and complete the gig. The next one involves me tracking down a woman police officer who, why did I say, oh yes, a woman police officer. I don't know why my script I decided to mention that she was a woman. It's just a police officer. That was a little bit dumb. Either way, I need to track down this police officer who's been apparently way too invested in a case that her bosses want her to stop investigating, for lack of better terms. So I ask around this market, and eventually a lady of the night tells me she's got a room in the nearby hotel. So I go ahead and get a room myself, and then use the balcony to sneak my way up into her room. And after a confrontation, I talk her out of working on this case, telling her her bosses are the ones who want me to kill her, because that's actually what I was sent to do, but I decided to just convince her not just look into the case, and she agrees, completing the quest. Next up, I gotta find some medicine that's used to treat cyberpsychosis. I track it down to an abandoned building and find a man with a shotgun who is a veteran from the war. He says the medicine doesn't work, and I try and talk him into giving me the meds, but he becomes hostile, so I just reflect his shotgun blast right back at him. Just Uno reverse card, and I have to say, shotguns are both the best and worst thing for enemies to use. The worst because they can easily kill me in a single hit, but the best because deflecting them oftentimes kills the enemy shooting me in a single hit. Either way, I take the medicine and deliver it to a Dropbox, completing the gig, before moving on to another one that involves me kidnapping a dude named Blake from this clinic, and it's really not notable because I managed to stealth the entire gig, never getting detected, so I just walk in, take him down, and deliver him to the back of a fixer's car where I shove him in the trunk and complete the quest. After that, I actually have a stealth-centric one for once, like you're supposed to stealth it, and I do it really easily. All I have to do is save this guy named Cheetah and escort him to a car, and I do so by stealthing around this hotel complex and using this balcony to get around a bunch of tiger claws that are looking to kill him. Also, nobody actually calls this dude Cheetah. Either way, I get him to his car, then deliver him to some nomads, completing the gig. The next one involves me finding a man who was working for Regina, then suddenly disappeared, and she needs some data that he was working on. I die on my first attempt to a group of enemies here before trying again and just barely avoiding death, like a few times. I managed to kill off everybody here, but it was not pretty. Very much so blink and health bar moment. Either way, turns out he was killed and that's why he disappeared. I managed to find his data before also finding a note that mentions that the Ripperdoc here is killing people to sell their implants to others. I head upstairs and confront the Ripperdoc. He tries to be clever and run away after offering to show me something, so I put a knife through his skull and complete the gig. The next gig is one of the hardest in the game for me as it involves a ton of enemies that are spread out, and I just really struggled with the layout of it in general. I think it's more down to the positioning of all of the enemies than it is to the actual number though, because I don't struggle like this with other quests that have way more enemies. Anyways, I have to kill this guy who's hiding out in the slums of Watson, and the issue, as I said, is just the placement of all of the enemies, which forces me to stealth through the entire thing because I tried the battle many times and I just couldn't win. Eventually though, I do find a path that allows me to stealth through the entire thing, and for some reason I thought I needed to kidnap the guy, but I just had to kill him, so I end up carrying him out of the area where he just dies in my arms, so that was a bit of a waste of my time, but thankfully this gig is over and I get to move on from one difficult gig to another where I have to make my way through this Tiger Claw dojo, which doesn't sound too difficult until you realize most of the enemies here are melee, which also doesn't sound like it should be a big issue, but it is. Mostly because when I'm fighting more than one enemy in melee and multiple of them charge me, I can't deal damage. I pretty much just have to permanently block, and even then I'm taking chip damage as they attack me through the block, because whenever I just swing at them, one of them will end up blocking, which will pretty much neuter any damage I'm gonna end up doing. So my only option against melee enemies I've found so far is parrying, and right now I'm really bad at it. Later on, get really good, but right now I suck at it. So instead, I just, I stealth through it, which is becoming a very, very common trend in this so far. Was hoping to have more slashy bits, but then I banned cyberware, so I can't be tanky, so I don't know what I was expecting here. Maybe this should have been as a ninja instead of as a samurai, but samurai just sounds better. Either way, go down in the comments and tell me if this should have been as a ninja. After struggling for a long time on this, I managed to get down to the basement, save the guy, and escort him out, while only having to kill a few enemies, mostly with stealth takedowns. Moving on, next up I need to sneak inside this warehouse and find some data for a cop. So I do just that, getting a ton of stealth takedowns on some maelstromers before finding the data and taking it to a cop who turns out to be a dirty cop. I threaten him and then pull a psych move on him, completing the quest, because I just wanted to make him sweat. I give him the data, and wow, there are a lot of gigs. I'm wondering if I should keep going into so much detail on all of them, but I'll figure that out later. In for a penny, in for a pound. At least for Watson, I'm gonna cover every single one of them, which if I was going to choose one not to cover all of them, this would probably be the best one because there's 26, I think, for Regina, and the next closest is like 13. The next gig involves me stealing data off a van, and surprise, surprise, I stealth the entire thing. After that, I have an actually interesting gig that isn't just a stealth thing. I mean, I do stealth through it, but it's more interesting. It's called Freedom of the Press, and I have to make my way into this news broadcasting building, and I struggle to figure out how to enter it for a really long and embarrassing amount of time, but eventually I figure out I need to jump onto this roof that I tried to jump onto for a while, but then gave up because I couldn't, and then tried again and I could. It was weird. Either way, I sneak past a whole bunch of automated defenses, which was really easy, before finding this reporter who is being hunted by the corpse. I managed to convince him to go meet with Regina, who was his mentor that for some reason he hates now because she stopped being a media and started being a fixer. Either way, after convincing him, I escort him out to a car, completing the quest, but it was just really interesting to see a quest where it's like just trying to save somebody who was doing the right thing, because he was just trying to put out stories about things that mattered instead of what the corpse wanted you to know. After that, there is a sequel to an earlier gig, you know, the one where I had to put the tracker on the Russian car? Well, now I need to make my way into that Russian's penthouse and steal a data shard from him and deliver it to the Chinese. So I do just that, making my way into this hotel, paying a lot of money for a room, and then using the exterior of the building to scale up into the penthouse, where I find him and his girlfriend? Co-worker? No idea, but I knock her out and leave her in a side room, steal the data shard, and make my way out of the hotel. But on my way out, I don't know why, but I wanted to see this shard on the counter, so I pick up the shard. That counts as stealing, and I get detected, which fails the bonus objective, and I didn't want that, so I save scum, reload an earlier save, don't steal the shard, which was really dumb to do, and then make my way out to meet up with the Chinese. I try and have some small talk with them, but they won't budge, so I just give them the data shard, and they go off on their way. The next gig involves me saving one of Regina's mercenaries from Militech after a gig went bad. This was a huge stealth section with a bit of combat, and I end up completing this one in a single try by bribing some locals for a way inside this complex? Not really sure what it is. Either way, I then use stealth takedowns to clear the area and get in a little bit of combat, but it's not too bad, before finally reaching the merc named Tiny Mike, and he opens a door to a nearby restaurant, and we manage to sneak out to a waiting car, completing the gig. The gig after that one is another stealth one primarily. I'm hired to head into this basement and blow up a bunch of equipment being used to make drugs, so I promptly blow up the drug manufactorum and complete the gig. It was real easy. Moving on, I make my way to the next, and I am so happy to say, final gig of Watson, which involves me finding this guy who sent Regina a call for help. I find my way inside this warehouse and find a crazy woman screaming and looking for someone. I manage to stealth around this arena, which is very clearly designed for a fight with her, and just use a stealth takedown to, you know, non-lethally take her down. For whatever reason, everyone acts like I just killed her, but I definitely chose the non-lethal option. Either way, I save the guy and complete this gig, and with that, all the NCPD jobs and gigs in Watson are completed, so it's time to get back to the main story, you know, 30 minutes into this video. But before I do, if you all are enjoying this video, please consider liking it. It really helps me in the algorithm way more than you would expect, and any help with that means making these videos is a lot easier, and maybe I can get an editor at some point and it'll become more than a once a month thing, and maybe a twice a month. Heck, we could shoot for the stars. Maybe it'll become a weekly thing if we get lucky. Alright, shilling out of the way, I finally meet up with Jackie outside the mega building, and he tells me about a job with Dexter Deshawn, the biggest fixer in Night City, and gives me my car back with repairs. I then can break this section of the quest by getting on my motorcycle that I had bought a while back, but I fix it by just heading to the Ripper Doc named Victor, who I pay for some cyberware, but for whatever reason, I just realized watching the footage that I forgot to remove it, and I also realized I've been using quick hacks to turn off cameras, which, yeah, I completely forgot that those hacks were a part of the cyber deck, which is cyberware, which I said I wasn't using, so I have really not followed my unofficial rule very well, but you know what? I do know that I fix it later, because later on, I'm going to remove all of this cyberware, but for the heist quest, I think I leave it all on. Either way, I'll just keep you all updated on cyberware when I'm using it, when I'm not. This was a dumb thing to try and, like, make a hidden rule or whatever. A hidden rule that I told you all about. I go meet up with Dex, and he tells me I need to go get a robot from Maelstrom and speak with the client putting on the job after revealing that we are stealing from Arasaka. I then make a call to a Militech woman from Maelstrom called Meredith Stout, who is looking for a shipment that was stolen from her, and I happen to know that Maelstrom are the ones who stole it, and that my robot was a part of it. I meet up with her and try to see what happens if I just say nothing, and well, I get very dead for saying nothing. The next time around, I agree to pay for the robot using their money and head off to the All Foods factory to meet up with Jackie. We head into the factory and meet a Borg boy named Dum Dum, who makes us sit down and offers us some drugs before showcasing the flathead robot to us, and then their leader, a man named Royce, gets his panties in a twist because I mentioned that Dex already paid Brick for it. Brick is their former leader, and because he's upset, he pulls a gun on me and I cut a new deal with him, paying with the Militech money, which turns all of the Maelstromers hostile, kicking off the dungeon crawl, which was super fun as the combat is incredibly fast-paced, but also relatively fair. I end up saving Brick, their former leader, from a trip mine, and then have to fight Royce after he gets into a mech suit, and I die a lot. Around a dozen times because, simply put, Royce is incredibly tanky, and if he hits me with a single melee attack, he kills me during the animation of me falling down and getting back up. So I can't let that happen, and I'm reduced to mostly using throwing knives and occasionally using windows where he's stuck in an animation to run up and wail on him for a little bit, and I'm just too stubborn to stealth past this. I've just been doing so much stealthing, and I don't want to do it here, so I buckle in, strap up, and spend a long while fighting him until eventually I get all of the patterns down and manage to kill him, completing the quest by heading outside and talking with Meredith Stout and Jackie for a little bit, as well as calling Dex to tell him we have the robot, before making my way to Lizzie's bar, where I meet up with Evelyn Parker, the woman running the gig, and this is a long section of me meeting her, Judy, a brain dance technician, and long story short, we're going to break into a penthouse of the Kempeki Plaza Hotel and Arasaka Hotel here in Night City so that we can steal the ultimate Dorito from Yorinobu's fridge, and with that, I complete the quest and make my way to the Afterlife Bar, which is a hotspot for mercenaries in Night City. I have a drink with Tiny Mike, who just so happens to be here, and then I also drink with Jackie because I'm an alcoholic, before making my way to a meeting with Dex, Jackie, and T-Bug, where we go over the plan one last time, discuss payment, and I start the heist quest by getting in the back of a Delamain and waiting for Jackie to join me. Oh, and Delamain is like an AI cab service. It's super fancy. Jackie and I walk into Kempeki Plaza and head up to our room, where I go through this long section where I glide the flat... I didn't glide it, I guided it. Yes, this spider robot is very good at being aerodynamic and falling slowly. I guide the flathead robot through a bunch of rooms, eventually having it become a face hugger for the building's netrunner, and after that we wait around for a little while before we start the whole stealing part by making our way up to the penthouse, where I grab an egg and a gun before we raid Yorinobu's fridge. Oh, also I should probably mention Yorinobu is the heir to the Arasaka Corporation, and yeah, we grab the best potato chip in the world ever. Best potato chip that has ever existed from his fridge, and go to leave, but unfortunately, there's a bit of an issue. Yorinobu is coming back to his penthouse to meet with his dad, so we have to hide in this conveniently placed pillar. Why was that a tongue twister? Conveniently placed pillar. I don't know why I struggle with that. Either way, I end up watching a family dispute that escalates incredibly quickly, and after that, the building goes on lockdown and T-Bug gets squashed. I then grab an iconic knife from Saburo's dead body, Saburo being Yorinobu's dad, who just died, and then I make my way up to the roof where I get into Saburo's AV after killing off 2 of his guards, and grab his katana, and these 2 weapons are easily the best combo in the game, as they both inflict bleeding, and they both heal me whenever I use them against a bleeding enemy, so it's very much so a throw knife at somebody, then hit them with katana, and I'm healing while dealing a bunch of damage, so get ready to see both of these used throughout the rest of the run. I then go to leave the penthouse, but accidentally launch myself from the roof like a real parkour master, but unfortunately, this kills me. So I have to do all of that again, but on my second attempt, I instead jump off the roof just a little bit later, and this time it doesn't kill me. I then proceed to sneak my way through the hotel, only getting into outright combat once or twice, but I get my way through to the basement where Jackie and I crawl into the Delamain cab, and we meet Adam Smasher as he tries to Adam Smash us. Luckily, we manage to get away, only to get chased by some drones, which I'm forced to use a pistol to take care of, so I do just that before Jackie ends up dying in the seat next to me, and we arrive at the No-Tell Motel. I tell Delamain to take Jackie to his family and then head inside where Dexter Deshawn decides to shoot me in the face, which is a generational fumble on his part, as I go into a dream memory thing where I'm Johnny Silverhand and I plant a couple of bombs in Arasaka Tower before getting killed by Saburo. The combat here was really easy as it always is, so after that, I wake up in a landfill and start crawling out only for Dexter Deshawn and Saburo's bodyguard to find me. And the bodyguard shoots Dex in the face before stating the obvious, and I get into a fight with some Arasaka biker ninjas as Takamura, the bodyguard, as opposed to the, ice cream salesman or whatever. Either way, he drives. We end up killing off all of the ninjas, and I have to call Delamain to take me back to Vix, and both Takamura and Victor do some emergency surgery on me before I wake up and find out that the Holy Frito chip has managed to, start killing me and all, because it's replacing my neural pathways with those of Johnny Silverhand. With this terrible news, Misty helps me back home, where I take a little nap and then wake up to have a fight with myself, sort of, take some pills, and get a call from Takamura asking me to meet up. I then head out of my apartment and immediately run into a new side job as a couple of cops ask me to check on my neighbor Barry, and I try to, but he just doesn't reply, so I decide I'll come back later before making my way to the parking garage to take my car to meet Takamura for it to be rammed by a Delamain saying beep beep motherfucker, which is a super underrated line. Anyways, this ruins my car, but that's fine because I still have my bike, so I head over and meet with Takamura, and he gives me some leads to track down in the form of Evelyn Parker, which is a more obvious one, and the designer of the biochip, Anders Hellman. I decided to start with Hellman by making my way over to the afterlife where I meet up with Rogue, and Johnny helps me convince her to take on the job I want her to do of finding Anders Hellman, so I pay her the 10 grand and am told to wait for a day. I then speak with this random guy at the afterlife who gives me a side job to go pick up something from a fridge and deliver it to him. It's shady, but hey, money is money, so I make my way over to find this fridge, opening it, and there's a whole dude in there. I don't think he's dead, but whole dude. I call the guy and he tells me I need to sneak this dude who was in the fridge to a drop-off point, so I go ahead and sneak around and fail on my first attempt. You see, there's a bunch of tiger claws trying to kill us, so I have to sneak out of this area, which is really inconvenient for me because I have to carry a guy the entire way. But on my second attempt, I just think I get lucky because I find a route that has very few enemies on it, and I only have to drop him a few times to stealth take down enemies. But yeah, I deliver him and get the reward, which is the Scalpel Katana, which is very good at dealing with drones, turrets, and mechs, as it does electrical damage. I then head back to my apartment and go talk to Barry, my neighbor, and he tells me that his best friend died, and we talk for a bit, just talking about life. I then decide to head out and go to the grave of his friend, and along the way, I stop to talk with Wakako about the job to save Sandra Dorset. She pays me and tells me to go get some cyberware for free from the nearby Ripper Dock, but that can wait as I go to the columbarium, which is a very fun word to say, even though I messed it up like 8 times that you didn't hear about. Either way, I find out that Barry's best friend was in fact a turtle. I then return to the mega building and tell his cop friends they need to be better friends and stop bullying him. They then go hang out together and I complete the quest. After that, I make my way to that Ripper Dock, get the free cyberware, and then immediately remove all of my cyberware, completing Wakako's quest. As I'm writing to another quest, I get a phone call from Mama Wells inviting me to Jackie's Ofrenda. So I start making my way to that and get another phone call, this time from Takamura, telling me about some meeting I'm going to ignore for now as I have a party to attend, or, well, a celebration of life to attend. I talk to Mama Wells, spend a while going through Jackie's stuff, give Misty a motivational speech, and then sit through a super sad ceremony and give a few words myself before completing the quest by telling Mama Wells to be nice to Misty and getting Jackie's bike, which I take over to the meeting with Takamura, where him and I talk to another Arasaka bodyguard named Oda, which goes really well as he basically tells us to screw off, but also tells us that Hanako, the person he's guarding, will be at a parade in Japantown very soon, which we can use to our advantage by, getting to meet with her through nefarious means. I don't know how I was going to end this sentence, and my script just doesn't make any sense now. That's great. I need to fix that. Alright, what happened next is I tell Takamura that we need to go meet with Wakako because she's the fixer in Japantown, and I tell him I'll meet up with him at Wakako's sometime later, and that sometime later is going to be days. That's because at this point I decided it was a wise idea to just bite the bullet and do all of the NCPD scanner jobs on the entire map, which took me over 10 hours to do. I'd give you another montage, but I legitimately deleted the footage because it was taking up too much space on my hard drive for the rest of the run. So I only have a footage from like a couple of them, so it's not worth a montage. So yeah, just know that it took me 10 hours and well over 100 deaths to do all of them. Oh, and also that wasn't like all of them. There's a couple more, at least one more that just shows up later in the game, and I don't know why, because it didn't have a reason why it couldn't spawn earlier, but there is at least one more NCPD job left in this entire thing. Anyways, moving on, I'm still not meeting with Takamura as I decide it's time to wipe out all of the gigs too, so let's start with the city center, as it has the least gigs with only 5 to complete. I head to a location and get a call from the local fixer Dino, don't really know how to, don't know what he goes by, I didn't ever hear it. Either way, he tells me I need to go to this club and upload a virus into their system to give a former owner control of it again, or something like that. So I go ahead and get detected immediately upon entering the club's, restricted area and die before on my next attempt, just using all of the stealth skills I've built up to actually stealth instead of just walking into a guard. I don't know why I did that. Either way, this time it goes much smoother. I literally stealth take down one guy and then upload the virus. It was super easy. Done and dusted. Next gig is very similar. Just, it's the same gig except for different club and different objective. Instead of uploading a virus, I have to kill a dude, and I decide to do it without being detected because I really just don't want to do combat in this club because it was really open and there were a lot of enemies here. I do die on my first attempt, actually my first 3 attempts, but that was because the first one I didn't notice a camera and it detected me and I died to the guards, and the other 2 I die because I just try and bum rush the target that I'm supposed to kill, but I die twice trying that. So on the 3rd time, I just use my throwing knives, which have a massive bonus damage if I hit enemies from stealth, and yeah, that works out real good. I kill him and then rush out of the club as fast as possible before anybody can notice me. And yeah, that one was the right call. I complete this quest as well. I then make my way to the next gig for Dino, which involves me finding footage from some journalist who died under very suspicious circumstances. Apparently the footage is on like the metro systems security thing, so initially I try to stealth through it, but it just devolves into a ton of combat. That was really fun, as enemies for once don't just rush me all together, but instead come one at a time, allowing me to have a series of 1 versus 1 duels, which is this is what the build is about. It's the king of this. This is the one thing that this build does better than anything I've seen in Cyberpunk, because when it's just you and another dude, if he shoots you, he loses. If he tries to fight you in melee, he loses. If he does anything, he loses. Every action for him, heads I win, tails you lose kind of situation. Either way, no, it was just really fun, and I'm just dragging this out because I want to show more of me doing stuff. Yep. I find the data and complete the quest. I also take a detour at this point to take an egg that I stole from Yorinobu's apartment and put it on a plate inside of my apartment, so that way later on it can hatch an iguana. But back to the gigs, my next one involves me sneaking inside this building to find a woman named Ketch, who I need to kill because she did some evil things. Real evil research, and yeah, people want her dead. She tries to pull a fast one, escaping by using the excuse of saving her data, the evil research data, but she gets to the terminal and then just runs yelling guards. I was already aiming my knife at her head because I was just like, this is the Ripper guy from the gig that Regina gave me all over again. And I was right. So yeah, she died about 2 feet from where she decided to run for it, and I just book it out of the building and complete the gig. I then move on to the last of Dino's gigs by making my way to this dockyard and killing a whole bunch of guards from stealth before downloading some incriminating documents and escape the dockyard without being detected, completing the gig and getting the achievement for completing all of the city center gigs as well as all of these city center and CPD jobs. Moving on, it's time for Wakako's gigs, and at this point I'm only gonna mention gigs that I found interesting or fun because they're getting really repetitive. Most of the gigs in the game I stealth through, and if I don't stealth through it, I'll probably mention it. So, interesting Wakako gigs. Well, the first one that comes to mind is this one where I have to save the Netrunner Bugbear, and it comes to mind because I absolutely had a blast doing this gig because the combat was super fun. It starts off with stealth takedowns, and then I get to go through a corridor section where I'm in this like apartment building and there's a bunch of narrow hallways, and I don't know why, but this build is really fun in that situation. So it was really fast-paced and fun. I even ended up jumping out of a window and looping around behind all of the enemies to fight them in a stairwell. It was just it was a blast. I end up saving Bugbear by injecting some coolant to lower her body temperature and then disconnecting her from the net where she was trapped, completing the gig. She also had a gig that was just straight up a reference to John Wick, as a Russian named Sergey gives me a car to deliver to the Tiger Claws, but when I ask for more info, he mentions angering an unassuming hitman who had a dog. After that, the only other interesting Wakako gig was this one where I have to try and sneak inside a Tiger Claws dojo, which was a lot of fun, as I really enjoyed figuring out the patrol routes on this one in particular. A lot of the stealth missions were sort of hit or miss. They were mostly too easy or just felt kind of BS. This one was a perfect middle ground. It was a very well designed stealth mission, and I felt like there was a lot of ways to approach it, and I liked the way I did it. I believe I uploaded a virus to their system and got out, completing the gig. Moving on from Wakako, I go to take on Dakota's gigs in the Badlands, and out of all of these, the last two are the only ones that were super interesting to me. The first of these involves me stealing a radar van for Dakota from Militech, and this was just a fustercluck because of the sheer amount of enemies I had to deal with. Legit, I end up turning a stairwell into a mass grave as I was stacking bodies left and right in this thing, and it just becomes comical at a certain point whenever it felt endless. I was doing a horde mode run, and luckily a stairwell is a really good way to make sure I get a 1v1 after a 1v1 after a 1v1, so it was very manageable once I figured that out. Before that, died a few times, because not great at fighting a ton of enemies whenever multiple of them can attack me at once. This is why I was so confused earlier about that mission where I was like, there's not a lot of enemies, the van mission. This had way more enemies, but felt way more fair, and I cannot describe why. If you have a reason, go down into the comments. Either way, I had a blast with this mission, I delivered the radar van, and it was fun. And the next Dakota job I want to talk about was saving a guy from a Militech prison camp, and it had a bonus objective of not killing any of the Militech personnel, so I end up failing a couple of times, but eventually I managed to use non-lethal stealth takedowns and learn the patrol routes of all of the guards in order to save the guy from the camp and deliver him to his nomad friend without killing any of the Militech personnel. Overall, this was great in the same way that the Tiger Claw's dojo was, as it just felt like a good stealth mission. Like, it felt really well designed. That's all of the Dakota missions I wanted to talk about, and let's move on to talking about Pacifica, as they have 1 gig, so I feel obligated to talk about it, and admittedly, it was a really difficult gig. I had to steal a van from the Animals gang, which I thought would be easy, but was completely wrong, as the animals are really good at killing me really dead, and like super dead, very dead. Omega, like they killed me so dead I died again. Anyways, I eventually just resort to the old reliable and just stealth through it, but even that is difficult, as it's such an open area and very vertical, so it's hard to describe, but there was just nowhere I could go, it felt, that didn't have somebody noticing me until I found the correct route. I steal the van, drive it out, and deliver it to Mr. Hands, and with that, I've completed all of the Pacifica gigs as far as I know. Moving on to Padre, and looking at the footage, I only remember doing one of these. So yeah, that's the one I'm talking about. This one involves me going into a Valentino's gang bar and stealing some data, which is super normal and kind of boring, but the reason I remember it is there's a guy here who was at Jackie's Ofrenda, and he lets me upstairs if I talk about Jackie, which was cool, and it also made me not want to do any combat in this section because I don't want to kill that guy. He was a friend of Jackie's. So I failed this quest a bunch of times because I just keep getting detected. There's just a lot of enemies here, and they seem to come out of the woodwork even whenever I did try combat, so it was not worth the hassle to try and fight through this, so instead I figure out the right route to stealth through it and steal the data, completing the quest. Moving on to El Capitan and Santo Domingo, I actually can't do all of his gigs just yet, as the last one is locked behind main story progression, but I didn't know that at the time, so yeah. There were actually a few interesting gigs here, one where I had to investigate a woman's house to find out that her sister had cyberpsychosis and ended up killing her. Also, there was this quest where I needed to kill an animals leader, and it's only interesting because I end up stumbling into another beat on the brat fight, which I try and win for a solid half hour, just getting my ass handed to me, before I eventually give up and sneak out back to kill the animals boss, leaving the fight for later. I also had another fight where I have to save this guy who hosted a massive party with strippers while trying to run away from the city, which was real dumb. The combat in this one was frustrating, but not because the combat was difficult, but because I kept on getting just detected whenever I tried to stealth into this one, no matter what I did, which frustrated me, which means I did poorly in the combat because I was annoyed, because it felt like BS. Either way, I end up giving up on stealth entirely at a certain point and just fight my way through the 6th Street gang members to save this guy by driving him over to a nomad who is really bad at driving, like comically bad. I don't think that guy is getting out of the city, but not my problem, I did my part. It's time to move past gigs entirely now though, as it's time to get on to side jobs, which also, at this point, I'm only going to cover the highlights because honestly, some of these sort of forgettable. The first one I end up doing is really fun though, as I do a shooting competition with the 6th Street gang that I just fought, which is kind of funny. Anyways, I absolutely destroy this shooting competition. You have to drink, which makes your vision a little bit wonky, and then hit 12 targets at a bunch of stations around Santo Domingo, and yeah, to hit all of the targets but like 2 of them in the very first one because I was just like trying to figure out how it all worked. Either way, this gives me an iconic rifle that I will never use. The next one I want to talk about, however, is more fun. It's just fun for fun's sake. I really like fun quests. As I head over to the GIM where I help these guys get a roller coaster working and ride it with Johnny, which was just great. 10/10. Game amazing. Launch problems be damned. I absolutely love silly stuff like this in games, and who doesn't like a good roller coaster? After that, I do this job for Pepe the bartender at Mama Wells Bar. That is basically just a noir movie as Johnny narrates me stalking his wife to find out that she's addicted to plastic surgery and not having an affair, which seems better than having an affair. I go ahead and tell Pepe that he should just let it go. She loves him, you love her, don't make this a big deal. After that, I watch an ad for Cyberpunk Edgerunners, which was super funny to me. I've already watched the entire series. I loved it, by the way. I have a Cyberpunk Edgerunners poster on my wall. It's been there for a long time now. Anyways, I watched that ad, and instead of trying to figure out exactly when it happened, later on I text with Falco, and I end up getting David Martinez's jacket at a certain point, so you'll see me wearing that probably at some point. I wore it for a really long time in this run. After that, I go ahead and make my way to the Delamain HQ, where he pays me for destroying my car earlier and asks me to track down a whole bunch of his runaway cars, which all have funny personalities, from being afraid to drive, being an angsty teen, hating flamingos, or even just being a reference to Portal. They are all hilarious. After I find all of his cars and bring them back to him, a little while later, I end up having to fight my way through the entirety of the Delamain HQ, and I get to decide whether to get all of his alternate personalities shut down, like restore everything, reset everything, or to set them free, and I decide to set them free. After that, the next interesting quest was, the one where I have fun time with Meredith Stout. It's interesting because I was expecting to get a certain weapon from this, but then I remembered that it replaces the weapon with something else whenever you turn on the NSFW filter in the game. So this was a complete waste of time, but I was disappointed, and I wanted you to share in my disappointment. If you know what this weapon is, you'll know why I'm disappointed, because that would have been funny. Next up, I install a ton of cyberware to make myself incredibly tanky and better at unarmed combat, as I'm taking on all of the Beat on the Brat quests, which is just a bunch of fights. I do a whole bunch of fist fights, and they all sort of feel samey. One of them, I end up killing the guy afterwards because he didn't want to honor his bet, but other than that, the animals lady that I fought earlier, she was still a little bit difficult, and I don't remember the other fights, so they must not have been that interesting, honestly. Either way, I immediately uninstall all of the cyberware again, and after that, there's not any side quests I really want to talk about, so let's just get back to the main story. There will be more side quests later to talk about. I finally show up to that meeting with Wakako and Takamura, where we get the plans for the parade, so we can get into Hanako's float and talk to her about Yorinobu killing his father. I then leave Takamura to do some more scheming and make my way back to Rogue, who has found Anders Hellman, and it turns out that I'm gonna need to down an AV in order to get to him. She recommends a nomad named Pan Am to help me, so I call Pan Am and tell her that if she helps me get Hellman, that I can help her get her truck and cargo back, so that way she can finish her job and also just have her truck, which I assume she really likes. So after meeting up with her, doing a bunch of driving and gathering things and messing with the local power grid, we put on a light show, and I get into this stealth section where I sneak over and kill this lady to get the key to Pan Am's truck, and then I go steal the truck from under their noses, and Pan Am insists that we go kill the guy who betrayed her and stole her truck in the first place, and oh boy, I wish I would have just told her no. This section sucked. It was bad. I died 23 times. 23 times attempting this singular combat section because I just can't take a hit. I swear, a stiff breeze kills me, I feel like. I just roll over and die at the first sign of bullets. At this point, if I don't get the option to stealth, I have to play perfectly. I am lucky to survive legitimately one hit from low tier enemies. So after suffering through all of those deaths, I managed to slowly fight through the entire cave using attrition as my only friend, popping out and dealing a little bit of damage by deflecting bullets back at them, and then the second my stamina is below half, I hide again. It took me about 15 minutes, but eventually I managed to kill all of the enemies and, you know, complete the quest by heading over to a motel to deliver some goods for Pan Am and take a nap before waking up to find Pan Am, and she goes over a plan she schemed overnight that involves us using a power station to create an EMP to knock the AV out of the sky so we can get to Elman. Yeah, I'm apparently British now. I'm taking the H off of words. So we head over towards the power plant, getting me set up on the turret as we go, and after killing some drones with the turret and turning all of the knobs inside to 11, we run away to a cliff and wait for the AV to show up. Once it's there, I experience some technical difficulties, but they resolve in time to blow the power plant up, causing an EMP that weakens the AV enough for Pan Am to hit it with an explosive flying telephone pole, and it starts to fall out of the sky. We chase it, and Pan Am ends up getting shot fixing the turret before I'm sent to shut down a cannon that is set up on the AV. On my first attempt, I managed to disable the cannon and nearly managed to clear out all of the robot defenders, but I end up dying to this massive drone flying around. But on my second attempt, I just, deflect its own bullets back at it to kill it instead of trying to stab it, because, yeah, why would I stab the giant flying drone? That was dumb from the beginning. Either way, we save Mitch, who was being held by the pilot of the AV at gunpoint, and after that, Pan Am and I have to chase these holographic vans to track down Hellman, and I end up dying twice, both times due to this one in particular turret that just really had my number. On my third attempt, I just decide to stealth through it because this has become the stealthing run. It really is Old Faithful for me right now. Anyways, we track Hellman down to this gas station, and I do a more traditional fight where I just fight through everybody and make my way to Hellman, which was actually really fun. Like, I kind of like the combat here, even though it was very long range, which isn't actually that great of an advantage for the player, because enemies, they either don't have damage fall off or they just can actually shoot you from further away. But I don't know, I found it engaging and fun, and I liked blowing up the gas station itself, which was very fun to do. Just hitting those gas pumps and watching them go kablooey is very satisfying. What was I talking about? Oh, right. Yeah, I get Hellman, knock him out, and then take him to a hotel where I ask him if he can fix me. He says no, that I'm going to die. So I hand him off to Takamura before going to meet with Takamura, which is a really funny turn of events because, dude, Takamura's in two places at once, or he has invented teleportation. Anyways, I meet up with Takamura and we do a bit of breaking and entering while I get a phone call, which I need to complain about. Why do I never get phone calls when I want them? Throughout this entire run, I've been constantly getting phone calls in the middle of dialogue with other characters, and it has been on my nerves. I don't know why. In this run in particular, it happens so much, but it really did. Either way, that's my TED Talk. Stop doing that. After testing out this virus that Takamura bought on the local security systems, we decide to head to this Arasaka warehouse where Johnny does an elite gamer move, and I go about infiltrating the warehouse while only dying a couple of times. I don't bother trying to fight this one. I already know I won't make it happen, so I just try running past everyone, and predictably, that doesn't work. I die. But eventually, I do a mix of things. I stealth through one section and then run, trying to reach the parade float that Hanako will be on. This doesn't work either, so I just resort to full stealth, which I was trying to avoid and took forever, but I do manage to eventually reach her float undetected, and with that, I complete the quest by escaping the warehouse through the roof. Anyways, I'm just going to talk about the combat for the rest of this run. Like, if there's no combat, I'm not going to cover what's going on with the story anymore. Yeah, it's really early in the morning, and I have a lot of editing to do, and so yeah, we're making compromises here. I'm sorry, guys. Moving on, it's Judy's quest line, and this one involves me finding Evelyn, so I go through all of the stuff leading up to finding Evelyn. I will mention punching fingers in the face twice, and throwing throwing knife through his skull a couple of times just to make sure. But after that, I go to the dungeon where Evelyn is being kept, and I get into a massive combat section because I accidentally get detected, and it turns out to be the best thing ever because I just had a ton of fun hacking and slashing and doing this like jumping from enemy to enemy to enemy thing, and it was an absolute blast. Either way, we find out that I need to go talk to the Voodoo Boys in order to find out why Evelyn wanted the biochip to begin with. So I call Mr. Hands, having him try to set me up with a meeting with the Voodoo Boys before meeting up with Takamura for the parade because it's time to go talk to Hanako. This quest is just full combat, and I stealth through the first section, failing on my first attempt and dying horribly, but on my second attempt I managed to, stealth through, kill all 3 snipers. I've gotten really good at stealth, so unless I make a silly mistake, I just know exactly what my limits are, and that means I very quickly got to the hardest fight of the entire run. No contest, not at all. I died 23 times in that Raffin cave. I died like way more just trying to fight Oda. He was a real problem because I could only ever survive 1 melee attack from him, and he sort of combos melee attacks, so unless he just did his 1 attack lunge, instant death, unless I parried. So I just had to get good at parrying, because if I didn't, then this fight would have legitimately been impossible, and it took me a long time to get good at parrying. Yeah, that's pretty much this fight in a nutshell. I learned to parry real good, and I'm gonna use that throughout the rest of the run. Eventually I defeat Oda and decide to spare him before watching Hanako get kidnapped by Takamura, and making my way over to this apartment to meet up with Takamura and Hanako. I forget how many times I'm supposed to knock, so I get blown up, and then I show up again, and I just keep hitting F for some reason, which is the interact button, and get blown up again because I only knocked once. But third time's the charm because I knock the right amount of times, get to speak with Hanako, and then, the bullet to air ratio kind of inverts as the Arasaka soldiers come storming in, and I'm forced to choose whether or not I want to save Takamura. And at this point, I was thinking this run might end with me choosing the Arasaka ending, or might end with me choosing the Johnny ending. I didn't know, so I decided to save Takamura in case I did choose the Arasaka ending. And I'm rambling, but while I'm rambling, you've been watching me die a bunch of times because, yeah, it was a struggle. It was a real struggle. Not having any armor, I did not think was going to be this bad. I die so quickly, and when I run into sections where I can't stealth, it is always just this attritional battle of deflecting bullets, throwing knives. I don't actually get to, like, run and slash at people very much until there's only 1 or 2 of them left, because that is just a real good way to end up dead. After saving Takamura from the room he was trapped in, I just sort of sprint really fast. We both do a lot of running, and we make it outside without dying, which I'm glad that finally worked for once. I then go through the whole section where I meet with Hanako through a proxy, and yeah, that happens. After that, I decide it's time to go deal with the Voodoo Boys, and long story short, they sent me to the GIM, which is an abandoned mall, and this goes super easy. Barely an inconvenience, as the melee boss in this area is just a complete pushover, and the rest of the area is designed to be stealthed. So put 2 and 2 together, not that hard. I will talk about the boss for a second, because it's pretty funny. I just waited for her to throw her hammer, grabbed it, and then proceeded to run around the arena throwing knives in her face over and over and over. Also, very early on, while she was doing her opening animations, I just ran behind her with my katana and broke the little pack on her back, so that way she couldn't be invulnerable. So yeah, this fight was laughably easy. I then find the Netwatch agent, plug my cord into his hole, no stop, and I die because the Voodoo Boys betrayed me without knowing that I'm already a zombie, so death doesn't apply to me. The Nacho of Destiny revives me once again, so I go ahead and meet with Placide and Brigitte, the leader of the Voodoo Boys, and after a really long Johnny section where we find out that Johnny dated a woman named Alt who has been turned into an AI, we go ahead and talk with Alt, the AI version, and she agrees to help us. I leave the Voodoo Boys church, only to have the world's worst anxiety attack, and wake up in a hotel where Johnny gives me some dog tags and asks to cosplay Jesus as he really wants to take the wheel. I agree and head over to the afterlife, taking the special pill to let him take control, and he goes on a rampage across Night City in order to find some intel on Adam Smasher and to convince Rogue that he is, in fact, in my head. With that done, I go do the I Fought the Law quest, which, while it's a great quest, I already covered it in more depth in my last Cyberpunk run, and I legit stealthed the entire thing, so there's not much really interesting to show. So we're skipping past it and moving on to the Ebonike quest, which was real funny again in one of those BS ways, because once again, like with 6th Street earlier, I'm getting detected by people who shouldn't be able to detect me. Like, I have done so much stealthing, I know when somebody can see me. These people just seeing me from crazy angles. And it was not funny, so I just decided violence was the answer and went very violent. Also, another funny thing that happened was whenever I finally did get onto the boat, I didn't get a chance to even touch Grayson. Rogue just walked up and bodied this guy. Either way, I complete the quest by taking Johnny's gun and using it to kill Grayson, which, yeah, I don't know, it just felt right. I then grab Johnny's Porsche from this cargo container and head over to his grave for a heartfelt conversation. He then asks me to let him take Rogue on a date to the movies, so despite her just telling me to leave her alone, I call her and set up a date before picking her up and taking her to the movies, where her and Johnny almost do the dirty, but she rejects him halfway through, and Johnny asks me to let him go meet up with his old bandmate Carrie. So I do that, him and Carrie have a nice little reunion, and it's decided we're gonna do one last samurai gig. I then go through with finding Nancy at the Totentons and ending the dispute between Denny and Harry, picking to play with Harry when I'm told to wait for a call from Nancy. While I wait, I decide to go out to the Aldecaldo camp and help get their leader Saul back, which takes all of 10 seconds as I end up using my technical ability attribute to skip the entire thing using a storm drain. I save Saul, we have a cozy night in an abandoned hotel, and I return to the city for the samurai concert, which is always just so much fun. I really like just being on the stage and looking around. There's not much to do, but it is very fun. Moving on, I do the final NCPD scanner job, which was so incredibly satisfying to complete. Also, just in case you're curious, my final completed quest count was actually at 251 at the end of this run, and I'm pretty sure 100 of them, if not more, are NCPD scanner jobs. I'm sure that there are some quests I missed, some obscure ones. In fact, I already know one for sure that I missed. I missed Scorpion's funeral. I don't know how. I had notes of quests, and I guess I just didn't ever look at that one. It's also hard to tell exactly which quests you haven't done, and I know that, like, it's a little bit clickbait, but, like, I did every single quest in my quest log. Whenever I went to finish the game, I literally just had the Phantom Liberty quest and the final quest. Moving on, I go ahead and do the El Capitan final gig, which involves me going to get cyberware because it's literally impossible without it. Or if it is possible without it, I don't know how to. So yeah. Basically, it's just another car chase segment where you have to hang out of a window and shoot like we did with the drones right at the end of the heist mission. But the enemies who are chasing you in cars, well, the cars don't blow up no matter how much you shoot them. Maybe I'm just dumb and there is a way, but I tried shooting the driver, nothing worked. They all die at a scripted time, so you just have to be tanky enough and be able to cycle your healing items well enough to survive this like 2-minute long ride. And if you do that, you win, and if you can't do that, you lose. Anyways, that completes the last of El Capitan's gigs. I then head over to the next Beat on the Brat mission, which involves fighting a pro-level boxer who is borged out. I also end up getting super petty here because I just will not accept defeat like I did earlier. So yeah, I spend an hour doing this fight because it's another fight where basically I can't let him hit me because I was just dying whenever he got any kind of combo in. So it was just parry simulator again, but his attacks were harder to read, especially the knee attack where he knees you. I could never read that one. Either way, I parry him until I win. and complete the quest. Also, there's this little kid who played me with a sob story, which was hilarious. Anyways, I remove my cyberware again and head off to steal a tank with Pan Am, which just involves me using a punch card to help get a train moving, shooting this coupler on said train to get it to go faster, and killing a whole ton of Militech guys. Overall, fun and short quest that I follow up with a long and annoying quest as I start the Bartmoss Collective quest. Wait, actually, no, there was another one in between those. Oh, right, I custom ordered a bike from Yaiba, which took all of like 5 seconds, and then picked it up, which counted as a quest. A little bit weird. Either way, Bartmoss Collective. Yeah, this quest literally just a way to waste my time and get some fun dialogue with Johnny, I guess, as it has me going across the entire map hacking these routers to find out that the guy who people think is some kind of super rebel who speaks wisdom is actually a fortune-telling machine in Pacifica, which is really funny, but I was also just annoyed with how much running around the city I did just to find that was the end of this quest. It was a good joke. I was just annoyed at the time. Anyways, there's only 2 more quest lines I want to talk about before we get to the end of the game, and those are going to be Carrie's quest line, because he's the romance I've chosen and the only one I haven't shown on the channel, I'm pretty sure, which involves us getting a call from Carrie to have us help him sabotage the Us Cracks band, which is a band from Japan that is coming to Night City to do a tour, and they are using one of Carrie's songs. They're doing a cover of it, and that really upset him. So we go blow up this van and run away from the cops, and then I end up helping him sneak into the Us Cracks concert because blowing up the van didn't work. And yeah, we find Us Cracks, the band itself, find out that the corps are screwing both Carrie and them. They all become friends. We take a selfie, which was kind of funny. And yeah, the third quest involves me just meeting up with Carrie at this like press event where I give an interview, meet his drug dealer, and then head up to the top floor where we make out. And yeah, wait, I'm missing something. There was a 4th quest where we go on a boat that ends up belonging to his agent who screwed him over at the corp. Yeah, this one was fun because at first you have no idea what's going on and you're just like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go have a nice day with Carrie on this boat. And then he reveals that we're here to destroy the boat, which was super fun. And also this locks in the romance, or at least it allows you to lock in the romance. This is the end of the romance quest line. So yeah, Carrie questline. I had a lot of fun with it, no complaints. Other than that, there was one other side quest line that I wanted to talk about. It's one where you're sent to kill this dude named Joshua, but the guy who wants him dead dies with you, and Joshua basically just hires you to go around with him, just hang out with him for a day. You go around, find out that he is a prisoner, and that he is going to be in a brain dance of his own crucifixion, which is a bit crazy, and I thought it just kind of ended there. After we hung out with him, we had a good day, he preached to us about his religion, but no, there was a second quest that I didn't know about where the agent calls and asks you to show up, and then he asks you to take part in said crucifixion. And I don't know if I can show this on YouTube, but I did it. I put on my construction hat and I nailed him. But yeah, I'm not even gonna risk it. It was just crazy. I didn't know this was in the game, and wow. Anyways, there's a ton of quests that I'm just glossing over here because this video's gotten a little bit long in the tooth. I am gonna go ahead and talk about what everybody wants to hear. Who did I choose to end the game with? I chose to go with Johnny and Rogue. Past that, super cool ending that I hadn't done yet because we use a bomber to blow open a hole in Arasaka Tower, then use these gravity boots to jump in and fight through a jungle of all things, which, you know, jungle warfare, not on my bingo card for Night City. But we did do that, and then we jump down, all goes all murdery, kills a whole bunch of people, and then I fight Atom Smasher, and I end up dying on my first attempt. Oh, also, Rogue blows herself up, which I felt super sad about. Like, that actually hit me in the feels. But I die on my first attempt with Atom Smasher because I just got greedy, and this fight really was kind of disappointing to me because I couldn't really use my katana as much as I wanted. It was mostly just staying out of range and throwing my throwing knives into his face over and over and over. I probably could have used my katana more, but it would have just been slower. So I did end up slashing at him a whole bunch whenever he was locked in certain animations, whenever I felt safe. But overall, I don't know, just didn't feel like a super challenging fight to me compared to Oda. I don't know, nothing's gonna live up to Oda. But I think that fight is more suited for melee builds, Oda in particular, because like the parry function, like you can't really parry anything Atom Smasher does, I don't think. Either way, super fun. Johnny gets to kill Atom Smasher pretty much himself, and I end the game going into the prologue where you give V the body back, which was really cool, getting to see myself go to space. And with that, I have completed the run, and normally I would ask the question I asked at the beginning: can I beat all of Cyberpunk's quests on very hard? And no, I'm not gonna answer it this time. I'm gonna let you all answer it. Let me know what you think. Did I follow the spirit of the run or not? Either way, you all are beautiful. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you liked it. If you did, make sure you like the video. Really helps out. Thank you to my channel members and patrons. They are beautiful and support me so much. This is Willow, signing off.